Welcome back to Heaving Bosoms, the podcast where two best friends recap romance novels while sighing, crying, and shaking our fists at incredibly talented authors.
Stack our shelves with the clinches out. Shout it from the rooftop, can you hear the sound? Yeah. Live your best life, love it out loud. Love it out loud.
Hey HBs! This is part 2 of The Undertaking of Hart and Mercy by Megan Bannen. If you haven't listened yet, I highly encourage you to start with part 1, which published yesterday. When we left off, Mercy and Hart were finally on the dance floor together, and that's where we're going to jump in today. You get the exciting conclusion, including what made us start flailing in all caps text messages while sobbing and blubbering all over ourselves. Okay, here we go.
His eyes glinting with mischief, he backed his way toward the middle of the dance floor, shaking his hips from side to side as he pulled Mercy with him.
And oh, those hips.
Oh, yep. And then he whips her out into a basket whip step. Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching.
Yeah, it's so good.
And then Nathan shows up and kills the whole fucking mood.
Yeah, Nathan shows up and he's like, oh, hey, Marshall, how about I cut in with my girl here, since she's my girl. And she says that the confidence that he had with everything up until now, including killing that drudge, just completely deflates. And he's like, oh, yes, yep, and he just like books it off the dance floor.
What a mood, Hart Ralston.
I mean, seriously, relatable. So then Nathan's like, oh, really, Mercy? A marshal? It's not really a very safe occupation. Like, what are you even doing? And she's like, what are you talking about? Your girl. We're not dating. And he's the worst. And he's like, what, are you going to embarrass yourself and go and run after your demigod hero? And she thinks to herself, yeah, I think I am. And so she runs after Hart and she has to run uphill. And she goes, of course he's going uphill. Mm-hmm. And she gets to him and she's like, what is this about? Like, you saved me from a literal zombie, but then you leave me? You abandon me on that dance floor with that weasel? And he's like, I thought that he was your boyfriend. And she's like, well, he's not. He's a weasel. And he says, he does have a bit of a weaselly face. Yes. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. She asks him, do you like cake? And he says, is that a hypothetical question? She's like, no, do you like coconut cake? And he's like, yes. And she's like, do you want to come over and have coconut cake with me?
And he does. And then while they're eating cake together, she confides in him the truth about all of the stuff with the business being sold and bought out and like how sad. And and
how she's feeling and wanting to be an undertaker, loving being an undertaker.
Well, and specifically, he asks her about it.
Yeah, he says, where does that leave you?
And he's the first person to ask her that. Oh, yeah. And so she like launches into it and it's so beautiful and they're talking and chatting. And then this was rough. So she's talking about her job, right? And she is basically talking about how she confronts her own mortality every single day and how she can do this and she can do that. And like, this is why it's important. Like when I send the dead sailing across the salt, can I say real quick that I love the euphemism for death?
Same.
They sailed the salt sea. Like,
yeah.
Oh. And so beautiful. She's talking about all of this. And then she's like, but none of that is going to mean a thing when I'm gone. And honestly, it's a comfort. And most people steal themselves off from death. But you, and he like is like, go on. And she says, that's it, isn't it? You could go on, and everyone you'll ever know or love will grow old and die, but you'll still be here. It'd be like reading a book that doesn't end, no matter how good the story is. You want it to be over at some point. For everyone else, death is a question of when, not if. But for you, it's the opposite. If, not when. He finally met her gaze, his face unshuttered, and she saw that while most people were scared to die, Hart Ralston was afraid to live.
Mhm.
Thank you, he said. For what? For getting it.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And then, listener, they're done with cake.
And like, what is he to do anymore? He better go, I guess. And so he gets up and he goes to the door, and she's like, Hart, you've got a little frosting on your lip. And he's like, oh, and he tries to get it, but it's on the other side. And he's like, oh, this is my charm and how suave I am.
And then she says to him,
Hart, I think I'm going to do something stupid. And he says, what?
No, he says, okay.
Oh yeah, he says, okay.
And then she kisses him on the corner of his mouth where the frosting was. And then when she pulls back, it's dead silent. And she says, well, say something. And he says,
oh my God,
I'm still waiting for you to do something stupid. And then he says, can I kiss you? But before he can even get the statement out, she's like, yes.
Yes,
and
please.
Then we have a beautiful, beautiful kiss. And then he pulls back and he's like, sorry, I shouldn't have. And she's like, Mercy didn't want his apologies. And then she just goes right back into it, and it's amazing. And then she breaks off the kiss and she says, come upstairs.
He says, are you sure?
And in his head, he's like, upstairs meant Mercy's apartment, Mercy's bed, Mercy's naked body held against his own. It meant his body, his heart, his painful fragility offered up and laid bare before her. And then he does, of course, think to himself about how he hasn't told her about the letters. And oh God, but how can I fess up when clearly she wants me, the man that I am in front of her that she's always known right now? And every time the letters came out, to be clear, listener, this time he doesn't, but there are a bunch of times before the letters come out that he starts to tell her.
Mm-hmm.
And then something fucking comes up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, Hart, I need you to grab this lady by the arm and yoink her into an alcove and be like, I have to tell you something.
Yeah. And it's wild to me that he, spoiler alert, never does, because that seems like the only thing that wouldn't make her mad or make her think differently about him. Or like it only seems like a net benefit to me for him telling her, especially early. And for some reason, he thinks that it will turn her off from him completely.
Mm-hmm. So very importantly, at one point, he presses his forehead to hers because, listener, it's on TM. It's on TM. It's on TM.
Oh, she has her shirt unbuttoned completely before they even get up the stairs. And when they're like 5 stairs away from the door, he stops her to press her against the wall and kiss just the daylights out of her. And she's like, we're almost right here. And he's like, it's too far. She's like, I think we can make it.
At one point, he pressed his forehead to hers, and because it would be absurd to tell her that he loved her, he poured everything he felt into one word. Mercy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then it's just really super cute. Like they're giggling and laughing and having a great time together.
And like the enemies to lovers sort of makes it into the tone of this sex scene as well, because like he's kissing her all over, worshiping her boobs. And she's like, why are you not undressed? And he's like, I'm a little busy here. And then he keeps going. And then she goes, you better take off all of your clothes before I strangle you. And he's like, his heart sings about it. Oh, he loves it.
It's so cute. And then at one point he starts to like go down on her. By the way, this is a very euphemistic sex scene. Like, it's not super duper graphic. It's
right.
You definitely know what's happening, but like it's not the craziest spicy sex scene, which worked for this book.
Yeah.
All of the sex in this book works for this book very
perfect.
well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, you don't have to if you don't want to. And he looked up at her and wondered, there is literally nothing that I would rather be doing.
Yeah.
May I? And she says, okay. And like the explicit consent in this book is fantastic.
Yeah. At one point, she apologizes for her like giant underwear, which I loved.
Mm-hmm.
She says they're not very sexy. And then it says in his sex-fogged brain, the words not and sexy in relation to Mercy made no sense. And he was just like,
it was adorable.
I don't know what you're talking about. And then, after she comes and like, I think he also like fingers her and like he says, show me what you like. He gets behind her and like she moves his hand over her clit.
He maneuvered himself behind her and curled his body around hers and slid his hand between her legs, making her inhale sharply and buck against him. Show me what to do, he said into the soft skin behind her ear, and she moved her hand over his, guiding him.
It's so good. And then when finally she's like, I have a condom, can I put it on? And he's like, no, you can't. I have to do it or I will go off like a rocket. And then it says she lays back. He says, how should we like do this? She lays back and spreads her legs. And it was one of the most trusting gestures that it made Hart want to cry.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
also, at one point, she is like touching on him and he like a cry of feral bliss tore from his throat. Yeah. Serves you right, she told him. Any more of this and I'm going to beg for mercy? And she says, ooh, I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Oh, cha-ching, cha-ching.
It's so good.
And then he's like, are you sure I don't want to crush you? And she says, I'm a big girl, heartache. I'm hard to break. He wondered if she knew how true a statement that was. Hart was the fragile one, while she was strong in all the ways that mattered.
I'm just obsessed. Obsessed.
And then next chapter starts. She's expecting him to leave because most people are really, they never want to stay and cuddle because partially, I think this is just their excuse to not stay and cuddle is that they're like, well, there's a bunch of bodies down in the well and I don't like that.
She lives in the apartment over the Undertaker business. Mm-hmm. And so she's like, I'm just expecting him to leave. And then he says, well, she says, are you staying? And he says, do you want me to stay?
No, he says, I'd like to stay if you want me to.
Yeah.
And then they do. And she's like, it's okay. You don't have to.
Cuddle.
After the, yeah. So they're curled up in bed together.
He reaches for her. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And he props himself up on his elbow and says, what kind of assholes have you been dating? And she's like, very big assholes. You met one tonight. And he's like, they're weasels. What would you like to do? And she's like, I'd like to cuddle a little. And he's like, then come here. And so they're like snuzzled up and then they're talking. So then they talk a lot about like their past and their moms. And and then he starts to tell her about the fucking letters, but then pauses and then she distracts him and they have more sexy times.
Which is like not terrible.
That's a mood.
But gosh darn it. Hart.
Yeah.
So the next morning they wake up and what?
No, continue. I'm just so excited about them waking up the next morning.
So the next morning they wake up and he's like, fuck. And he's like trying to find his clothes. And she's like, he says, I'm so late for work. And as she's like watching him crawl around on the ground trying to find his clothes, she's like, I really thought that maybe we would wake up and like one of us would think it was a mistake or whatever, but I don't feel that way at all. And then she apologizes for him being late and he stops dressing to bend down and kiss her and say, you have nothing to be sorry about. And it's just the sweetest thing in the entire world.
I will say.
Yeah.
This flip from enemies to lovers felt very quick.
Weirdly, I found it to be really natural.
Really?
Yeah.
This felt very quick to me. And that's probably one of my only complaints about the book. Like, it's still good. I loved it. But for me personally, it was too quick of a switch. I remember thinking at this point that I was like, man, I love this, but this feels quick.
See, and all I could think was something that, okay, so I listened to Love to See It, which is a Bachelor recap podcast. And Emma Gray, one of the hosts, one of her like common refrains is, the bar is in hell for straight men. Like, dating straight men. The bar is in hell. And so what I thought about this was like, he knows about the letters. And so he knows he's in love with her, right? And Mercy is looking at a straight man who she's attracted to and like has a lot of chemistry with. And he's being nice to her. And the bar is in hell. Like, okay, whoa. Hello. This feels incredible.
That reframing.
Yeah. I could see myself as Mercy being like, oh my God.
She's used to a Nathan.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
You're right. By the way, the version that I've heard that brings me a lot of joy is the bars on the ground and they brought shovels.
Yes. Truly.
So then I'm gonna read to you chapter 25, the whole chapter.
Yes, okay? Please read them the entire chapter.
The entire chapter. Get ready, listener. This is an 18-part episode. Chapter 25. Hart was late for work. Very, very late. He could not possibly care less.
End chapter.
Can I say that's so one of my favorite
I was going to say
things? That. One of my favorite, what is the word I'm like narrative?
Devices?
That's the word. Device.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite devices where like
it's
the
like
whole
the
chapter is just like.
Chapter.
So
good.
Yeah. So now they're dating and oh my God. Okay. Very importantly.
Oh God.
She asks him, can I write to you?
Yeah.
And he says, we can't get mail. There's no Nimkillam boxes.
No, all he says is there are no Nimkillam boxes. He does not say we cannot get mail. Very
he doesn't
specifically.
Lie.
He just tells her there are no Nimkillam boxes, which implies
and lets
that
her
he can't get mail.
own conclusions. That is both simultaneously better and
shitty.
Worse.
Yeah. So then he's like, I'll be back in 2 weeks. And she's like, oh my God, 2 weeks. And he looks at her and he says, I cannot tell you how much I want it to be sooner. And then he and Duckers kill a few drudges, all right? And he plays Duckers so that Duckers thinks that Hart is doing him a favor by taking the bodies to Birdsall and Son. It's the best.
Specifically, Duckers is like, can we take it to them? And Hart was about to say no, but then he thought, fuck it. Professionalism is for people who are not in love with Mercy Birdsall.
Yes.
What had he been thinking? Of course he was going to use this shameless opportunity to see Mercy again.
Duh.
Okay, so we're going to zoom a little bit.
Yeah, we got to motor hard.
Couple of important things that happen. So she finally tells her family, hey, I love Undertaking. I don't want to keep any of you from doing what you don't want to do, from following your dreams. But I love this. And I've never been pressured into this. I love what I do. I love working for the business. I love all of these things. And it's so important to me. And they all rally around her. They're like, okay, we're going to figure out how to make this work. And it is so beautiful. She and her family is just such a fabulous subplot.
Yeah,
all of
lovely.
them.
And during this conversation, Zeddy says, Cunningham wants to shut you down really badly. And we're not big enough to be a threat to him. So there's something shady going on. He wants us out of business for a reason. All we have to do is figure out what that shady reason is, and then we can shut him down. And they're like, oh shit, yeah, that makes sense. So during this time, they're secretly dating for, I shit you not, 3 months, listener.
Can I tell you, I was flabbergasted when it noted in the book that it specifically said, so my note is literally, Jesus fucking Christ, it's been 3 months?
It's been
what?
3 months, and he has not told her that he is her friend from the letters. He has not told her. And meanwhile, and one of the reasons he doesn't tell her is because it makes him so happy that she's so content being with him that she doesn't need her friend anymore. And like that makes sense, but it would also make total sense to Mercy when you tell her that you're the letter writer and like, here's the reason I didn't for a while. Like all of it, Mercy would be like, oh, this makes everything better. Like this is not something you're hiding. Like this is just something it took you a while to tell me. Everything would be so totally fine. And for some reason, he's worried that her finding out he's the letter writer is going to make her break up with him. And I don't Hart is such a dumb dummy.
It tracks for him. It just made me mad.
It does. Yeah.
So importantly, it's been mentioned a couple of times from Hart's point of view. It's really weird because there's so many indigent drudges lately. Like so many, like keyless drudges. Like where the heck are they all coming from? Yeah. And then he's bringing them now all to Mercy to take care of. And she started so one of the drudges, she notices this weird patch on their appendix. And Mel, when I tell you, the minute she said that, I fucking Sherlock Holmes this
I did.
Fucking hard.
I did Sherlock Holmes
that. Yeah. And so there's these weird patches. And so she goes digging on the rest of the keyless drudges and all of them have the patch. It's just really hard to tell.
So they're dating for a long time. And one of the things we see is in the morning, she like starts looking at his keys and she looks at his like, you know, instructions for what to do with him key. And it says Cunningham's funerary service. And she's like, the fuck, dude, I am really disappointed in you. That is an inauthentic death experience. And like, fine, spend your money however you want.
It's expensive.
It's so expensive. They price gouged you hard. And so finally he decides, you know what? No, we're not doing this. He returns his package to Cunningham's. We see him like go to his lawyer and then end up at Mercy's house.
Super duper important before this. Okay. He gets injured and she's concerned about it. And he's like, don't worry about it. And he heals insanely fast, we find out. And it's because like the reason that he doesn't like talking about it is this is a sign that he's probably immortal as far as he and basically everybody else he knows is concerned.
Is that when he gets shot?
Yes. He has to take sick leave because of his injury. And then because he's taking sick leave and that's why he gets all dolled up. He gets new clothes and a shave and a haircut. And he shows up because he's decided on sick leave, I'm telling Mercy about these letters now. I have to. I'm going to do it. So he gets all like put together and he's returned his funeral package. And then he gets there and her dad, Roy, Pop, is like, oh,
for the first
Marshall
time,
Ralston.
Dad
what are
is
you
the one
doing
who
here?
answers the bell. Yeah.
Right. And he's like, I'm here for a new funeral package. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, I need to say something that's not a lie. So I'm here for a new funeral package is what ends up. So they do it. He buys like the top of the line, most expensivest thing. They've never even sold it before. And he puts his will in with it. And then the dad asks, why did you return your other package and come get this one? And he finally says like, oh, because I'm dating your daughter. I'm dating Mercy. And he's like, why? Thought you hated each other. And then he ends up inviting him to dinner.
Also, this is another Sherlock Holmes moment. I knew that because at first I was like, why the fuck? Because in his head, he's like, I can't lie to him. I'm not eager to do it. Mercy hasn't told him yet. I don't know how to tell him, like, sense of omission, blah, blah, blah. I'm dating your daughter. Most specifically, I'm dating your daughter. His voice tapered to nothing at the end. I can see that so vividly in my brain. And the reason that he would essentially, quote unquote, betray Mercy by being the one to tell her father without her knowing that they're dating is her dad knows what's in that will. And I was like, he just put Mercy in his will.
The dad does not know. The dad doesn't read the will. He just puts it into the folder.
How does he know
that's not going to read the will? Come on.
How do you know that there's 1.2 million credits in that will then?
because they read it when he's dead. They read it when you read a will at the end, when he's dead.
Oh, I
The
misunderstood
dad has no
all of
idea.
that. Oh.
Yeah, the dad's just filing paperwork right now.
Oh, shit. I thought that's why he... Oh, wow. You little shit. Don't fucking tell it. You little shit. Hart.
Oh, yeah. To Hart. Well, and he says the reason I'm telling him is because I cannot have one more lie. Like, I don't want to lie to hopefully my future father-in-law, essentially. So then they go out and Pop's like, all right, I'm going to head out and I will see you for dinner tonight. And it's in front of Mercy. And she's like, did I know that you were coming over for dinner? And he's like, no, but your dad knows that we're dating now. And like, it's a whole thing. And then he gives her a radio that she can play while she's building boats. And then they dance together to the radio. And he tries to tell her again. And then she starts getting sexy with him and unbuttons his shirt and sees the bandage. And she's like, what happened? And he's like, it's just a scratch. It's fine. And then she says, like, you look like you're going to puke. You look like very pale. And he's like, yeah, I'm really super nervous. And she's like, about dinner? He's like, among other things. And then doesn't tell her still. She has a bath. He sits with her in the bathroom and like they talk about everything but the letters. And then he's saying to himself, I have to tell her about the letters as they have sex. And then as they get dressed. And then as they're walking with Leonard over to the family dinner, I should be telling her about the letters. And then at dinner, a bunch of shit comes out because Zeddy is dating his apprentice. So Zeddy makes a toast that's like, to Hart, he gets shot and almost killed and still comes to family dinner. And she's like, record scratch, what the fuck? And he's like, and then they say, how did you find out? And it says, this is when he knew that his entire life was over. Because Zeddy says, I got a letter from Penn this morning about it. And she says, how could you get a letter from Penn? There are no Nimkillam boxes. And he says, Hart bribed the Nimkillams to come and get their mail in, oh God. And now her head is just exploding.
They go back to her house, her apartment, and she rightfully is pissed about a lot. Okay. So she's pissed that she found out through Zeddy, through Penn, 3 degrees of separation. She finds out that his wound is not like a minor scratch. He got shot.
Yeah, it's just a very quickly healing shot. And she finds out that they could have been writing to each other for the last 3 fucking months. And instead they've been going weeks and weeks without talking to each other.
Oh my God, I hadn't put the 2 pieces together of like letters in 3 months. That makes it so much fucking worse.
Right? And the reason he doesn't want to write is because he doesn't want her to see his handwriting, which looks exactly like his friend. And all he had to do was write one letter that said, hello, friend, my name is Hart, and I really loved having sex with you, and I hope it's okay with you now when I come back. It's all he had to do. Yeah.
So she gets mad at him at first about the shooting. Right? His injury and him not being honest with her. And he tells her everything. And like the reason he didn't want to tell her is because he was horrified by how fast it was healing. And then he ends up telling her the whole story of Bill and how he died. So we haven't talked about this at all in the book, but Hart can see souls. That's his special demigod power. Every demigod has one and he can see souls.
And they're like little yellow cloudy wisp things.
Yeah. And so he can like see when he successfully punctures the appendix because the soul bloop out and flutters away. Okay.
Which like, what do all the rest of the marshals do? You know what I mean? Like, do they just have to like quadruple tap every drudge to make sure they get through the appendix, or just get ready for it to come back to life? That's bananas.
Well, also, it's mentioned in the book that literally it is just a suspicion that that's what is happening, is that souls are finding lost souls find dead bodies to inhabit and then go into their appendix, and that you have to injure the appendix. Like, this is all suspicion. This is like,
all
it's an educated guess, but it's still a hypothesis.
But he knows that it's for a fact because he's watched it all happen. The only person he's ever told in his life is Bill, his mentor.
Yep. So when he was 18, he confesses to Bill that he can see souls because while they're in Tanria, in the middle of this field, he can see a house. And he can see the door open and souls going into it and then shut. And all of these things. And he's like,
it's his house.
Yes.
It's his childhood home.
He tells Bill about it. And when he tells Bill, they both come to the realization this is probably the house of the unknown god, because the house of the unknown god is where people go when they die. And because they have no idea why all of these lost souls are in Tanbria and stuck there. So a year after he tells Bill hatches this harebrained plot for both of them to go there. And since Hart can see the house and the souls, to go open the door and see if that fixes the drudge problem.
Right.
They get there. They are overrun by drudges immediately because this is section 28 of Tanria and it is where the most drudges are. Like this is where clusters form and like clusters are
they actually work together. They start cooperating.
Mm-hmm.
And so they maul Bill hard. Mm-hmm. Bill puts up a flare asking for more marshals to come. He tries to get to the house, but he sees that Bill just gets like swarmed. So he goes back and tries fighting off all the drudges. He's super injured. Bill is super injured. And by the time he gets to Bill is
there's no
definitely
recovery.
Dead. Yeah. And so he just says, puncture my appendix right now so that they can't get me. And he ends up striking the killing blow on his mentor in order to render his
fulfill
body
his
uninhabitable.
Dying wish.
Yeah. And so then a bunch of marshals get there, but by then he still can't get to the house, especially since none of the marshals know that it's there or that he can see it. And so
Mercy steps in it.
Does she though? Like she just says truth out loud.
I know she does, but like he's not in a place to.
Well, he's a dumbass. And also, he says that like this made me so mad because he says, instead of telling her the truth about the letters, I'm going to tell her an even worse truth. And if she can forgive me for this, she can forgive me for anything. And I'm like, that's not a worse truth to Mercy, you dingus.
Yeah.
Like, this is so dumb. Anyway, so she's like, hey, that was really irresponsible of Bill. That's not cool. And, like, you're not responsible for that. The guilt should be on his shoulders. And he blows up at her just like he blew up at Alma. He tries to, like, throw a fit and leave. He goes to get his bag, and Leonard starts playing tug of war with him over the bag until it rips in two and everything that he has in there goes flying, including the bundle of letters that have Mercy's handwriting all over it.
Yep. So she goes and whips out, like she's in a rage, and she runs down to the office, whips out some files, finds one that Hart filled out and looks at it and makes the connection, which this was so fucking smart, and I didn't clock it until later, that the reason she didn't notice is because she no longer is doing the paperwork, so she's not seeing his writing all the time. By the time they're writing letters together, she wouldn't be looking at his handwriting.
Not to mention that he notes it for the record that, like, because he doesn't want to spend any time at Birdsall and Sons, he fills out all of the paperwork in advance.
So she doesn't even have to.
She doesn't even have to give it like a serious look. She just has to like sign it and then send it off. So like, yeah, he's been setting that up for a while, accidentally even.
He's trying to apologize, and she says, I don't want your apologies. And you know what? I don't want you. And he stopped crying. He stopped feeling. He stopped functioning. He existed, and that was it. So he leaves. He listens to her. He leaves, and he's heartbroken. And he literally, in book, it says, all he could think was the word heartbroken, i.e. Heart. And then he puns his own name in his distraughtness.
Now it's H-A-R-T, broken.
Broken. It was awful. So, couple of plot points. Lillian and Mercy figure out what Cunningham is doing. Turns out he's created this patch that can not only cover wounds to make the bodies more palatable to their loved ones after their death, because, I mean, like, let's be clear, dying via drudge attack is not a nice way to go. It's basically zombie attack.
Decay. Yeah.
And they figure out that patch can seal up the appendix enough that you can stick souls back into it. And so what Cunningham is doing is basically creating an endless money farm by taking bodies that are supposed to burn or go into boats, patching them up, and then tossing them back into Tanria to get reinfected, which is why there are so many more drudges in the last couple of years than there ever have been before. It's because he's literally feeding them dead bodies to inhabit.
Yep, so that he can get the money from the government grant that pays for each one of the indigent bodies.
And that's why he's trying to get rid of all the mom and pop shops. It is horrifying.
Yeah.
And can I just say, Mercy fucking Birdsall, this is one of my biggest goddamn pet peeves in both real life and also in books. I understand why. I understand why she's doing this in her brain. I understand why people do it in general. I get it. I understand, but I fucking hate it. Okay. Because Duckers is like, Mercy, I really think that you need to give Hart another chance. Because Duckers is sent to drop off all of the indigent bodies because Hart is listening and not showing up at the thing. And she says to herself, she could reach out to Hart, but he was the one who had lied. He was the one who needed to explain himself. If he wasn't willing to swallow his pride and come after her, he didn't deserve her. He is listening to your wishes when you told him, I never want to see you again. Stay the fuck away from me for the rest of forever. Anytime a fucking character does that, it makes me want to strangle them. And I love, my friends, when my friends come to me for, advice and stuff like that, I've literally been they're listening to you.
Yeah,
you can't be mad at them for that. If you want to give them another chance, you're going to have to reach out and, give out that
you have to open the door.
Olive branch. It just drives me crazy. So anyway.
Okay, yeah. So now two things are happening at once. We see Hart heartbroken in Tanria, trying to do his job. And we see Mercy, trying to fix this, solve the mystery and then fix Cunningham so that he can't do it anymore. So while he and Penn are in Tanria one time, they get mega attacked by a giant cluster of drudges. And they're super far away from Sector 28, where they normally all hang out right by the house he can see. So he's baffled by this, but they almost get super killed. They're in a river. Salt Liquor comes and saves them. And it's the sweetest thing in the whole wide world. But he's made it so he's put himself in front of Penn anytime a drudge comes to rip a throat out.
Because he thinks he's immortal now.
Yeah, he's he says that if either of them are going to be immortal, it's definitely going to be him.
Yes.
And it's definitely not Penn. So he gets way crazy beat up, and he and Penn barely make it back to the barracks. Penn ends up on Zeddy's couch recovering, and Mercy finds out about this giant attack. She does find out, though, that he's at Alma and Diane's house, so that makes her feel a little bit better. And this is when Penn finally gets out with it, and he's like, hey, I shouldn't know about the letter writing thing, but I do. And I think there was a reason he didn't tell you. It was stupid, but it was a reason because he really cares about you, and I think you should give him another chance. And she's like, I just need to focus on this Cunningham bullshit, and then we'll figure it out afterwards, basically. So they start staking out Cunningham's funeral parlors, and then they end up bringing Nathan with them because they've seen him loading bodies up into trucks and driving off with them at 11 at night on, our Sunday, the day that nobody does anything or whatever. And so they catch him in the act of opening a portal into Tanria and tossing bodies into it. There's this big giant fight that happens. Hilariously, one of the guys that's helping him do it sees his mom walk back from Tanria as a drudge, and he's like, Cunningham, you put my mom's body in there? Like, even her body's not sacred? Oh, he's so mad.
Mm-hmm. He's the turning point.
Yeah. And Leonard's getting in the mix. And then Lillian finally ends up, taking care of the whole thing because she hits Cunningham in the head with her hemorrhoid pillow.
Uh-huh.
And so that, he puts the gun away or whatever and gets tackled.
Drops it. Also, very importantly, when Mercy gets out of the car, she's like, stay here. And Lillian's like, that's what he said about Nathan. And Mercy's like, are you seriously making a that's what she said joke right now? And Lillian's like, no, that's literally what Nathan said. And now they're shooting at us.
Yeah.
And I was cackling.
It's so good.
Then we zippy zap to Hart. He is almost fully healed, and they have this chat about immortality and how neither of them are going to know until they, know.
He and Alma, because Alma's also a demigod.
Yes, and he's talking about how he misses Mercy so much, but this is one of those situations where he fucked up so hard that he can't unfuck it.
Yeah.
And then that night, he knew what needed to be done, and the more he thought about it, the more he knew he'd do it. Because if he succeeded, Duckers and everyone else would be safer, and so would Mercy and everyone in the border towns. And he's going back to that house to try and do what he and Bill did.
And this is where I lost my actual mind. Mm-hmm. Because this man has the audacity to say, I approached the house from the exact same trajectory as Bill and I approached it, which maybe I shouldn't have since we failed last time. And I was like, dude, no, the reason you failed is because you didn't bring every single marshal you know to back you up and take care of the drudges while you go do that. Like, you failed because you and Bill tried to cowboy it on your own, and now you're doing it even worse. Instead of learning from your mistakes. Like, what the fuck?
Also, very importantly to me on his way there, this whole morning feels like a goodbye to life because he stops to get breakfast.
Yeah.
And he had given Mercy, jokingly, shit about her favorite book. Okay? Her favorite romance. No, actually, it wasn't jokingly because it was when he showed up to meet her for the first time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we find out has started reading the book. And so
because if he can't love Mercy in person, he's going to love her through her favorite book.
The pages of her favorite novel.
And so he reads the book, and then he goes and says goodbye to his favorite librarian.
Uh-huh! And, like, the person is like, there's a book drop outside, and he's like, I know, but I wanted to thank you for keeping me in books all these years. I'm not picking anything else up. I'm just here to return all of my books today. And
Red
she's
flag.
Like, oh, Enemies and Lovers. I love this book. And he says, so do I.
And then just walks to his car. Oh my God.
And then he checks out enough weapons to freaking arm an army, okay?
Yeah.
And then he gets to the fucking stable, and the only Equimaris there is Salt Liquor, and he looks at him and pets him, and he's like, you know what? You're exactly the asshole for this job.
That's right.
And so he goes, and all he can think about during all of this, though, is Mercy, because at one point, Mercy was like petting him and running her hands through his hair and says, don't you ever go back there. Don't you ever try to open that door again. Would she be angry with him if she knew what he was about to do? Or had she stopped caring about him the day she found out he'd lied to her? And then he's thinking about how, like, I don't want to cause her any more pain, but, like, I'd be lying if I said that I didn't want her to grieve me. Yeah, like, a selfish bastard that I am, I still want to matter to her.
Oh, my God.
And
he gets clobbered.
Yeah, clobbered. But he makes it to the door. But he is barely
alive. He's
alive.
For his life. He's got, like, at one point, he's reaching for the door, and a drudge bites part of his forearm off.
Horrifying. By the way, this scene is very gory and graphic, just so you know, listener. Like, if you read this book, like, if that's something that is hard for you, that scene is very graphic about what's happened. This whole book is very graphic about body horror kind of stuff. It doesn't bother me at all, but I did clock it.
But yeah. So he tries his key, and it doesn't fit.
It's
and
locked.
He's like, what the fuck? And he's like, this house was not locked a day in my life. And then he reaches for his mom's key because he has his mom's birth key. And he puts that in, and that unlocks it. But the door is like cement. It's so heavy. And so he's pushing it and pushing it. But he starts seeing souls come, and he's like, I've got to do this. And so he like wedges himself in the door so that it'll stay open. He's like sitting down, wedged in the door frame. And he's just watching hundreds of souls finally make it through the door into the afterlife.
And then the last fucking line of the chapter.
Please.
Is unable to hold on any longer. Hart let himself fly free. The wind carried him inside, and the last thing he saw was his own body dropping to the wooden floorboards of the porch as the door slammed shut behind him. And Sabrina Bradley, was a fucking wreck.
Hot mess over here.
And guess what? Listener, I don't know if you remember, but I already knew this was coming thanks to a certain somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Confirmation. It wasn't a suspicion. It wasn't a suspicion. Yeah. It was a thing. For sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Thanks,
now.
Mel.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, no, and now here is where Megan Bannen continues to be a ruthless genius, okay? Because I shit you not, there are 4 chapters in which we watch Mercy find out that there are just uninhabited bodies dropping everywhere, all over, and by the hundreds. And so everybody who is an Undertaker has to open right now, and they have to be open until all the bodies are there. And then we watch her find out that he's dead. And then we watch her say to everyone that, like, no, I am the one who is going to care for his body. It's going to be me. It will not be anyone else. Yes.
Through this whole scene. Like, because, like, she keeps just the way, because Megan Bannen, to be clear, is a very visceral, fantastic writer.
Yeah.
Like, this scene, I could feel this scene. Even as, again, like I said in the text messages to Melody, rationally, I know there's a happy ending here. But, like, I was gutted reading it.
Yeah, so she's like preparing the body and she's like trying to cope with all of this. We watch them figure out that there's like, you know, there is a will that exists. And then 2 Nimkillums just bust through the door of the Undertaker. And it's Horatio and Viserys, and they're fighting over who gets the right to deliver this last letter that like didn't technically get to a Nimkillum box.
Which, can I say that what if, especially because you can address things from the heart, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a heart address letter. All I could think was all of the letters that I've written to people that probably still exist in the world. I never actively disposed of them. When you die, the Nimkillum assigned to you gets those letters and delivers them, all of your unmailed letters. Like, I know I'm dead, okay? I know I'm dead, but, like, I don't want those letters going to
those
people.
Those weren't meant to be actually addressed by the heart. You know what I mean?
Like,
they were go anywhere.
They are addressed to those people with my heart, but, like, don't send them.
Yeah. So they end up like going in and they rip his vest in half fighting over it. Mm-hmm. And then they get the letter and they realize it's to Mercy. And then Viserys looks over and he says, "Oh no, not you. Like, you asshole. Like, how dare you?" He's just mourning Hart. Mm-hmm. And then please read them the letter that he wrote to her before he died and was just sitting in his vest.
Very specifically, there's a scene that I not only quoted but highlighted in my notes where Viserys hands her the letter and it's addressed to her and she says, after all this time, her friend had finally written back to her, and I had to put the book down because I was crying so hard that I couldn't read. So, dear friend, crossed out. My dearest, crossed out. Mercy. I don't know if I can get through this. My name is Hart Ralston. I could tell you that I'm tall and have blonde hair and gray eyes. I could tell you that my favorite color is yellow because your favorite color is yellow. I could tell you that I'm a demigod and a Tanrian marshal, and as I informed you in my first letter, a dickhead. I could even try to tell you that I'm, quote, your friend. But how can I, in good conscience, claim that title? A friend doesn't lie or hide the truth the way I did. This is my roundabout way of saying I'm sorry. Not I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. Full stop. I was afraid you wouldn't feel for me what I've come to feel for you, crossed out, have felt for you since the day I worked into Birdsall and Son and found a woman there who was color and light and joy in a world that had come to seem colorless and dismal and lousy to me. But that's not an excuse. There's no excuse for keeping the truth from you. I'm weak. That's all I can say for myself. I'm not a good man, as you well know, but at least I can tell you with absolute certainty that I am a better man for having known you. My letters to you have allowed me to be my best self the only way I know how, since I can't seem to make the right words come out of my mouth when I need them. And being with you, the real you, gods, what can I say? What words could do justice to the precious time you gave me? You've made me want to live my life rather than spend my time worried about my mortality or lack thereof. Maybe that's a mixed blessing, but it's more a blessing than a curse. So thank you, Mercy, for inspiring me to be better than I am. You have always been merciful, whatever my stupid, foolish mouth has said to the contrary. You once told me that I had a rapier for a heart and a depressing novel lodged in my appendix, but the truth is that if anyone bothered to scratch my brittle, craggy surface, they would find that my heart and soul belong entirely and completely to Mercy Birdsall, the best human being whose surface I have ever had the privilege of scratching. If I were brave, I'd send this letter to you. If I were braver, I'd destroy it. But I'm not brave and never was, not like you, so I'll keep it tucked beside my heart, unsent and unread until the day I die. If I die. And who knows? Maybe then it will make its way to you somehow. My words too late, as always, and never worthy of you to begin with. I hope one day you'll give your heart to someone good and decent and that you will cherish his heart in return. But it's a rare man who deserves you, so I'll leave you with this. I wish you a happy life, surrounded by the people you love and who love you in return. Your friend, crossed out. Sincerely, crossed out. Love, Hart. And then she is bent over his dead body, sobbing, and clinging to an arm.
Oh my God. And she has already claimed the crook of his neck as hers. It's her like nook to be in.
Mercy's nuzzle nook, capital N's.
And so she's crying into Mercy's nuzzle nook and clinging onto an arm that will never go around her again. And then
she sobbed into, this is very sad. She sobbed into the perfect curve where his shoulder met his neck, the spot that was supposed to belong to her for a long, long time. I'm still waiting for you to do something stupid, he whispered in her mind. I was stupid all along, she wept, but he couldn't hear her now. Not where he was. We're fine. This book is fine.
Fine. We're fine. Everything's fine. So now we see that like Alma and Diane get there, Penn gets there, everybody is grieving over his body. They find out that he left all of his like $1.2 million to Mercy because, you know, marshals make a shitload of money because it's really dangerous. And then we get to see what he has been experiencing on his side. And he ends up walking into Mercy's undertakers, and Bill walks into the room and he's like, oh my God, Bill. And the guy's like, oh no, ugh. It makes sense that you would see Bill. It makes sense that you would see these surroundings. I'm not Bill. I am the warden. I'm your dad. and I've waited 36 years to meet you, Hartley James. And like we've already seen him like leave his house as a child, stealing cookies from his mom's cookie jar, running past his grandpa.
About the description of that freshly baked cookie melting in his hands that set me off so fucking hard.
Yeah. Because he misses his mom so much, and so he gets these moments with her, and she nags him about his coat, and it's adorable. And then now he's in front of his dad, and he's pissed off. And he's like, oh, yeah, you want to talk now after you've been silent for 36 years? And the dad takes him to this tree that was by the house that he always used to go to when he wanted a dad to talk to. And the dad says, yeah, this is where I imagined we would talk if we could. And he tells him the whole story. He tells him how he decided to figure out why nobody wanted to die by living. And he was about to come home because living fucking hurts. And like he got the flu. And how awful is that?
Oh my God. I felt very seen as Immortal by Jeff. Okay. Because reminder, listener, this god went by Jeff. His name is Jeff.
His name is Jeff. But then right before he's about to, throw in the towel and just go back to being a god, because his job as the warden is to open the door for all of the lost souls that don't have like a key, right? And so he doesn't have a lot of death gods to choose from. And so he asked Grandfather Bones to choose he asked Grandfather Bones to open the door for all the lost souls. But because Grandfather Bones is like old as shit and doesn't have a hearing aid, he couldn't hear the shuffling feet outside the door.
And the knocks.
He couldn't hear anything. And so he never opened the door. And so meanwhile, Jeff meets his mom, falls head over heels in love with her. They get 5 months together. And then unceremoniously, Mother Wisdom comes and grabs him by the ear and drags him back to the house and is like, you need to be at your post because there are 472 souls that have not made it into the afterlife and it's your fault. And they can't round up the souls and the souls are rebelling now and they don't know what to do. But he's like, it's actually not that big a deal because nobody can get into Tanria until they can when Hart is about 10 years old. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so then the souls start compounding on each other because those souls are getting bodies and those souls are leaving. And then all of these souls are running around. And so there are thousands of souls now, so 25 years later.
I thought that I didn't understand that it was compounding. I thought that all of the lost souls, because they can get in now, right? If he opens the door, they can come in. Right? But the lost souls, specifically because Hart says, I don't understand. Why couldn't you open the door and let the souls in? And his dad's like, they wouldn't come in. And the only reason they came in when you opened the door is because technically you opened it. Tanria was always where you were going to die the first time and blah, blah, blah. And when you opened the door from the outside, you fixed what your dad fucked up. Because he makes comments about, he made a comment about, I can open the door and new souls can get in just fine. It's just all of those souls that didn't get in when I was off with your mom came back. And Hart comments a lot about how there's all of these souls just randomly, he can see them randomly floating around in Tanria. And so I think what it is that Tanria is very, it's just such a small area that 472 souls, that's a lot of fucking drudges.
No, it totally is. Yes.
And so even if it's just 472, I think
especially
it would have
when they can redrudge as many times as they want.
And so I think that what would have happened eventually, if Cunningham had been able to continue what he was doing, at some point he would have thrown bodies in there and they wouldn't have reanimated because there's no more souls. There's no more lost souls to take over bodies. I think that it was capped at 472.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So he then picks up on something, Hart. He's like, by the way, Jeff, what do you mean, this was where I was always going to die the first time? And his dad is like, well, you get 2 lives. One from me, one from your mom. Two lives to live, 2 deaths to die. And then
Hart's
he takes him upstairs and
oh my God,
tucks him in.
Wait, I'm so sorry. I have to pause on this because Jeff the warden, God Dad, has been talking about how much he's missed being a dad and like how much he wanted to meet Hart. And
Melody.
Sorry. He
you're fine. You're just going to set me off.
He missed out on this experience of being a dad. And like Hart asks him, you know, did you love my mom? And he says, yeah, I did. And I still do. And she came home to me. So they're together now in the afterlife. And so as they're talking in the tree, he goes from like being an adult to being a child as he like starts to understand. And he starts asking his dad these really vulnerable questions like, did you want to meet me? You know? And so Jeff doesn't just take him upstairs. He's like, you know, 6 or 8 year old size. And he picks him up and his little cheek is smushed on Jeff's shoulder because he's so tired. And the mom comes over and kisses him and says goodnight and like sends them both upstairs. And so the fact that like Jeff got to have this one really beautiful, like sacred parenting experience of putting your exhausted kid to bed and tucking him in and like making them feel safe and loved and then leaving made me so happy because.
And then having like, I can only imagine, I've never had it from like the parent side, but like as a kid, the kid just asks, actually I have, because like I've definitely put like some kids to bed and they always ask such an intense question at the end though, where it's like, it's too fucking late for this. Because he asks, Dad, why did the old gods go away?
Yeah.
And Jeff says, probably because infinity is a terrible thing. But you already knew that, didn't you?
Yeah.
And he goes
and
to
what
sleep.
A healing experience for Hart, you know? And then Jeff says at the end, he says, I'll be waiting for you. Meanwhile, we're now seeing Penn like yell at Hart's body, being like, why did you have to do this? Like, I miss my dad and you were that for me. And like, now you're gone.
I have to tell you, I was in the middle of this scene when my fucking grocery delivery got here and I had cold groceries. So I couldn't just be like, fuck it, I'll get to them later. I have never been so angry. I had to put my book down, and the whole time I was like throwing things in my fridge and my freezer as fast as I could. I was like, fuck you. You have terrible timing. You had a 2-hour window to get here, and you couldn't have come 10 minutes from.
You got here at the exact worst time. Well, so they're all around the body, including like the fucking Nimkillums are still there. And then they see him start breathing. And his wounds start to heal without being stitched up. And they're like, oh my gosh, he's coming back to life. And so everybody who loves him is on the one hand incredibly happy that he's coming back to life. But also they all understand that this is exactly what he was afraid of. Being immortal is the last thing he wanted. So they're happy, but they also know what a fucking tragedy it's going to be for him. Anyway, they take him upstairs into Mercy's bed. He sleeps for 3 days, and when he wakes up, all he knows is that he should not be here, and he has to go now because he promised her.
Not only that, he's in Mercy's bed in clothes that aren't his own. He's like, whatever happened last night is bad.
Bad. It's bad. So they finally get him calmed down, and Mercy comes in. And he's like looking at his feet and he's like, I'm sorry. And she's like, nope, I'm going to need you to be more specific. What are you sorry for? And he's like, I'm sorry I lied and I'm sorry I did this and blur. And she's like, no, you're terrible at this. And so I'm going to fucking help you. You need to be sorry for believing me when I said I would never forgive you. You need to be sorry for breaking your promise and trying to open that fucking door. You need to be sorry for risking and sacrificing your own life to save every fucking buddy else. And you need to be sorry for like not telling me that you love me. And you need to be sorry for not sending this letter. Like there's a whole, it's like this whole thing. And then he says, I'm sorry, Mercy. And she says, I don't want to hear an apology. I want to hear, I love you, Mercy. And he says, was that ever a question? I didn't think, of course I love you. And she says, I love you too. And they throw themselves at each other, and it's the best.
And I love it because she's like, for the love of the mother of sorrows, would you hold me, please?
Yeah. And he's
so
like,
like,
anytime.
And then he's like, please don't make me let you go. And she says, if you ever do let me go again, I will strangle you.
Yeah. Back to the strangling. And then the epilogue is like them months later together. He's a sheriff in town now, so he's not a marshal anymore. And it's called Mercy's Undertaking, and she and her sister run it. And
He got a new dog
named
Trudy.
Yeah, and Zeddy is a chef now, and he and Penn are together still. And, like, it's gorgeous, and it's wonderful, the end.
Also, very importantly, Horatio and Bessarius are their new delivery drivers.
Yes.
They're adorable.
They're so good. They deliver bodies now instead of working for the post office.
And then at the very, very end of the book, he snuggles up to her and bends down to kiss her, and he says, hello, merciful. And she says, hello, sweetheart.
Ooh! The end!
The end! Mel.
This book is so good.
It was so good. It was so good.
Yeah.
It was so good.
All right, Sabrina, what's your lady love?
This should have been my lady love a couple of weeks ago when we recorded. My lady love is my Steamy LitCon trip.
Yeah.
Steamy LitCon. That was freaking amazing. Okay. And I was reminded of this because I met a listener, and I won't like holler names out, just in case they, want to be a little on the deal, right? But like a listener freaking made a video talking about their favorite Steamy LitCon moments, and like they were talking about the board game night that we all did the very first night. And it was super duper fun. And then specifically she called me out. She was like, and I got to meet Sabrina from Heaving Bosoms.
Aww.
And like it warmed the cockles of my heart, And like it was just so sweet. And it made me realize, like, one, I already knew this. It was so good. And it was just so nice being surrounded by a community that you really this is a community that you're a part of, right? It was just being surrounded by romance lovers was so empowering and wonderful and fun. And I met so many cool people. And two, it made me not realize, but kind of realize, like I knew this rationally, but I hadn't ever put it into practice. It's never too late to fucking post your pictures from a trip. There's this idea that like,
that's true.
Or it feels like, for me, it's always felt like if I don't get it posted while I'm on the trip or immediately after the trip, I can't share those
I'm guilty
pictures.
of that too. Yeah.
Because I didn't post a single picture from Steamy LitCon. I went to England for 2 weeks last year and didn't post a single picture. I have so many pictures. Like, I went to Houston with the busy Romnivore gals. Didn't post a single picture. I didn't talk about any of these things on social media and I didn't share my joy is what I'm not. It's what I'm doing is I'm not. And there's a weird part of me that feels like I can't share that joy if I don't do it in what I consider a timely, quote unquote, manner, right?
Yeah.
Well, fuck that.
Yeah.
If I'll post, who gives a shit if it's been a month? Who gives a shit if it's been 18 months?
Right.
If you haven't posted those pictures, share the pictures, talk about the experience, like put it out there. Who cares? It's not like the freaking social media police aren't going to come lock you up for taking too long to talk about something that brought you joy.
Yeah.
So I guess this is a dual lady love. One, Steamy LitCon, and two, realizing that it's not too freaking late to talk about how happy something made you. So like it'll maybe I was about to say it'll come out before this. I'll put them up before this episode comes out. I can't promise that. Even though it's several weeks ago or several weeks in the future, I'm not promising this, but those pictures are probably going to go up because guess what? It may have been 6 months, but it doesn't change the fact that I had some incredible experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So those are my lady loves. What about you, Mel?
Mine is going to be lame and short compared to yours, but hey, dust off. Do you have extra eye frames? Do you wear glasses? Do you have multiple frames? And have you just been recycling the same 2 pairs over and over again because they're super comfy and you love them? you loved the other ones when you bought them too. And so, man, dust off their frames. I found these again and I was like, oh, look how adorable these are. Yay.
Those are very cute.
They're like they're going to be part of my repertoire again. And this, I think, can be applied to shoes. It can be applied to anything, you know, like, have you worn that shirt in a while? Then put it on, you know, because like it probably looks great, just like it did when you got it. Anyway, that's it. If you're in a rut, get out the stuff. All right. Keep being a badass and love yourself as much as you love.
Love yourself as much as Salt Liquor hates Hart, Ralston.
Oh, yeah. I love it.
I love
bye.
Salt Liquor. Bye.
Heaving Bosoms is produced by us, Melody Carlisle and Sabrina Bradley. Editing is done by me, Melody Carlisle. Our theme music is by the incredible singer-songwriter Brittany Fonts, and our art is by the ultra-talented author Kate Pryor. If you like our show, remember to follow us, especially on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Rate us 5 stars and leave a review. It seriously means so much, and it really impacts the algorithm. And of course, tell your friends about us, because word of mouth is the best thing you can possibly do for a podcast. And we're hilarious, so maybe even your friends who don't read romance. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at heavingbosompodcast@gmail.com. And if you want more of us, visit patreon.com/Heaving Bosoms Podcast. You can also find us on Instagram at Heaving Bosoms, on TikTok at Heaving_Bosoms, in our Facebook group, the Heaving Bosoms Geriatric Friendship Cult. We're on Threads these days. Geez, we're all over the place, and you can follow us there. You can sign up for our newsletter and get our Reading Embrace printable by going to heavingbosoms.com. All right, we're going to be back next week with The Butcher and the Blackbird.